Hello all, and welcome to tonight's review, which I am dubbing the corned beef review because I had corned beef. I almost missed out on corned beef this well, yesterday was St. Patrick's Day, but I almost missed out on corned beef. But I was able to find a place that had it, and while the corned beef wasn't that great, the cold cannon potatoes with it were just amazing. So, it wasn't all a loss. And I'm not going to be reviewing Irish whiskey. I'm going to be reviewing something else, somewhat exciting, because I've only really made one review of this sort before, and I'm hoping to make more reviews of them. And what are we reviewing today? Well, kind of hard to see here. Of course, it doesn't do it when I want it to. And this is La Clandestine Absinthe, and this is from Switzerland. 53% alcohol, so that's 106 proof. Yeah, so it has quite a bit to read on the back here, so let's get to it, shall we? La Clandestine, Absinthe Superieure. La Clandestine is handcrafted using the finest herbs from the Val de Travers, from the Val de Travers, the birthplace of absinthe. Based on a 1935 recipe, it was first distilled by Claude Alain Bugnon at his home at a time when it was illegal to produce absinthe in Switzerland. Claude Alain began legal production when the ban was lifted in March 1st, 2005. Since then, La Clandestine has been awarded many gold medals and distinctions. The Absinthe, Distillery, Forum Romand for spirits, etc. We recommend that you serve it in the traditional European manner. Pour 1.5 ounce of La Clandestine into an absinthe glass and slowly add 4 to 6 ounces of ice-cold water. As you add the water, the product will louche, turning a beautiful milky white and releasing fantastic aromas. La Clandestine is 100% natural, and every bottle remains handcrafted by Claude Alain. And Claude Alain, please tell me how badly I am massacring the French here. So yes, while absinthe has quite the distinction of history of being a French drink loved by Bohemians in France, it's actually invented in Switzerland. It became popular in France when the phylloxera blight destroyed wine crops throughout Europe, and people were looking for something else to drink, and this is what they found. And it kind of received, I can go to my previous video on it, it kind of received a certain reputation, and that reputation is mostly mythical. You don't hallucinate, you don't become violent, you don't go on a rampage or anything. It is fairly high proof alcohol, but you're not supposed to drink it straight, and it's not very pleasant to drink straight. Now, this is not green. It's in a blue bottle, as you can tell. And that is because this is a style called La Bleue or La Blanche, which is basically absinthe in which the herbal ingredients that give it the more famous green tinge are not added. And some might say that this is a taste choice. I don't think it actually affects the flavor all that much. Others is because it was supposed to be easier to conceal that it was absinthe if it was clear. So, if it's a green liquor, it's not too many green liquors out there, but there are certainly quite a few white distilled liquors. Now, the other name for La Bleue comes from the fact that once it louches, once it clouds up, that it has sort of a bluish tinge, and I think that that's actually the case. There's a sort of slight tinge of bluish to lavender to these previously clear liquors. Now, at 106 proof, I am not going to loosh it too. I'm not going to add too much water. It's going to be, the minimum there, 4.5 ounces to the 1.5 absinthe. And unfortunately, I don't have an absinthe glass. If somebody wants to buy me an absinthe glass, then send me one. I'd be so honored, and I would name it. I would name drop you every time I used it. But I doubt that's going to happen because I do not have a huge following, and I am not a particularly. I'm not a face or a channel that inspires such charitable behaviors. Anyways, so let's get to this. Pouring into a Glencairn. And I have some water here that was, I have it in glass, and I can tell. I put it in the freezer, get it as cold as possible, and you can see, because there's an air bubble there, that the ice on top hasn't completely melted. But it should be pourable at this point. So, let's go and pour ourselves 1.5. You can see this is a small bottle, and that is because absinthe is ridiculously expensive in Hawaii. I have to save some for another video I'm going to be doing, so just a wee bits left here. It's kind of funny how little 200 milliliters is. So I have about 1.5 in my Glencairn here, as you can see, perfectly clear right now. Very spirituous smelling at this point. But underneath that, you smell the wormwood and the, of course, anise. But mostly, the alcohol at this point. And it is the addition of water that really causes it to open up and expand and become something truly sublime. Now, the reason why people want to use an absinthe glass is because it makes it very easy to go and add the correct proportion of absinthe to water. By the way the glass is constructed, it has like a reservoir for the absinthe on the bottom, and then you add the water on top. And it allows for easy placement of either an absinthe spoon or an ice dish, because you ideally want to go and pour this as slow as possible to enjoy the aesthetics as the water falls in, and it creates a sort of oiliness in it, and then a gradually spreading cloudiness. And it is really, really something to see if you can do it. Unfortunately, I cannot easily do that because I just have this glass here. I'm going to try my best, and I'm probably going to spill all over this desk here. Actually, I know a way I can make this maybe. Okay. You can see I'm pouring it actually past it because I am trying to get it to go down like this. See, can you see it? So I'm kind of concentrating on not spilling water and absinthe everywhere right now. And I'm only partially being successful. This is actually a lot easier than the last time I tried it. Very thick, milky, and white now, which is good. You want that louche to be very opaque. Okay, and I just spilled some. Water down my sleeve here. And Just a touch more water here. This time I'm just going to pour. Oh, this is becoming a comedy. Okay. So that's about 2 parts water to 1 part absinthe. Maybe slightly less, but that's good. You can see really thick, very opaque, very milky, very thick-legged. You can even see like the cloudiness in the legs itself. So the louche is even showing in the legs. Big anise, big wormwood. Floating all around that, fennel. Anise is very sweet. And the wormwood kind of comes across as a spicy herbaceousness. The fennel kind of goes and adds a double layer of herbaceousness, a more nuance. So the herbaceousness is kind of nuanced. It smells both sweet and dry at the same time. Sweet from the anise, and the wormwood and the fennel are leaving a sort of drier note in the bouquet. Now, if I could have an absinthe glass that would capture the smell a little bit more, it would probably be really deep and amazing. Mm. So those of you who've had ouzo probably recognize it, but realize it's slightly different. Ouzo never louches this amazingly thick. Let's get to this, shall we? Smooth and oily on the palate. A long-lasting finish that is almost mentholy to wintergreen, with an almost bitter top note to the lasting long finish. Mids, a big burst of white and black pepper, transitioning into a sweet layer on the tongue, and then into that lasting finish. Effervescent notes, or I guess I shouldn't call it effervescent notes, but top notes of anise throughout, rising off of the tongue into the nose. Bitterness up front is when it's strongest, but it sort of lasts throughout and blends with an herbaceousness in the midst to finish. It's nice how it transitions from pepper to menthol slash wintergreen. And it really is interesting. I say menthol or wintergreen, but it kind of comes across as another different sort of numbing slash tingling sort of flavor, you know. And even though I'm saying pepper, it's not really like peppermint either. Almost woody like notes in the front underneath that bitterness, that wormwood bitterness. This is fairly dry, I would say. The sweetness is apparent on the tongue, especially in the aftertaste, lingering taste. But the front taste is very, very bitter from the wormwood, and probably difficult for some people. Some people would like, a sugar cube, because oftentimes when you go and drip or add the water, that's what the absinthe spoon is for. You go and add a sugar cube or a lump for sugar for taste. Now, I find that most fine absinthes have absolutely no need for that. So long as you, like myself, are able to handle bitter flavors. I think that for a newbie, yeah, a lump or two of sugar might make this a little bit easier to take. That for someone who is not into herbal liquors, that this would be challenging to say the least. And this is not a knock on this absinthe. It's just a statement of fact. Myself, I love bitter flavors, especially when it's playing into the complex symphony of smells, tastes, and flavors and textures even, because absinthe has just this wonderful mouthfeel to it. It's so thick and dense, you know? It just feels absolutely divine on the palate, just in a tactile, sensory way. Notice how I'm holding this. I'm trying to avoid touching the glass. I'm trying to keep this as cold as possible for as long as possible because as absinthe warms, some of the flavor notes become a little bit too wide and start to obscure some of the more subtle notes there. So as it warms, the anise notes start to widen from the middle. And there's this nice interplay with the bitter wormwood there since anise is fairly sweet. Not sugary sweet, but herbal sweet. A sweet herb, as it were. But at the same time, it kind of obscures the pepper a little bit. I think the pepper declines a bit as it warms up somewhat. It's still there, still detectable, but it's not so much of a nice bite in the midst as it were, as it was. I can see also that an addition of a little bit more water would lower the bitterness. So I'm going to actually do that right now. Just a hair more water. Go and see how that changes the flavor a little bit. So it's still within, you know, the recommended amount on the bottle, and within my taste guidelines for absinthe. Yes, definitely smoother on the palate now. Bitterness is a bit reduced. Unfortunately, pepper is also reduced as well as the sort of menthol, sort of wintergreen note, but still interesting nonetheless. I prefer the more intense, slightly less water. Intense flavor notes of slightly less water. Feels almost milky on the palate. Though I wonder how much of that is, Let's go and give it a shake here. Still pretty thick legs, you can see. Still very thick. Even that woodiness and herbaceousness is really difficult to, it's really multi-layered and it's hard to say in words. As one thing climbs, another, as you're, just feeling it around your mouth, certain things come up and then, subside. It's really just an amazing beverage. One that I can't recommend enough. Every sip is just a joy. But I think I've really kind of, you know, said what I got to say, explored all the really interesting taste notes there. So this small bottle cost me 25 bucks. Absinthe is an expensive hobby. Um, and I don't expect to be reviewing all that many of them because one, they're not very well distributed. I think there's only about 2 or 3 that are actually sold in Hawaii across all stores, period. But the reason why I'm reviewing this and my next review after I'm going to be making a meme video next. Um, just something that I kind of discovered while I was pre-tasting this, kind of exploring it before, and I ended up combining it with what I was eating at the time, and I just thought it would be an interesting little meme because it is just so out there. So the last of this is going to become a meme video. But I'm drinking this, and I'm going to be exploring. As you've kind of noticed, my channel has been about, I'd say, especially within the past 3 to 4 years or so, it's been 99% beers. And while I started with a stronger emphasis on whiskey and other spirits, beer kind of became the focus because it was pretty much the cheapest one to make a lot of reviews about. And it's also something I really enjoy. That said, at this point, I'm starting to go to the grocery store now, and it's like, I'm looking and I'm seeing, and it's like, I don't want to drink or review some iteration of an IPA, whether it's local or from a nationally distributed brewery. It's like at this point, I'm kind of burning out on beer, and I just want to go and explore other things. Unfortunately, that means that I'm going to be making less reviews because, like I said, I turned to beer because it was the cheapest thing to review and the easiest thing to review. There's no way on God's green earth I could go and pump out 2 of these a week, which is my usual. I usually review 2 things a week. It doesn't seem like that because of my upload schedule, in which I upload in large batches, which I really shouldn't be doing like that. But you know, beer allows me to do that. I could not go and buy 2 different bottles of absinthe a week or 2 different bottles of a high-end whiskey or rum a week and review that because I don't have the money. I don't make the money to kind of do that. And 2, that would leave me with a lot of like extra bottles. I mean, I'm not a really heavy drinker. I only drink when I pretty much drink when I do reviews. At this point in my life, reviews are pretty much 9 times out of 10 when I am drinking. The rest of it being sort of family parties or going out, and at that time I'm usually also, in review mode, and you have either brought or will be sampling alcohol, um, in with the mindset of possibly reviewing it. And yeah, I'm kind of getting sidetracked here. I'm going to be changing things up a little bit because I'm running out of local things to review, and also too, don't really feel like reviewing IPAs, and it seems like 75% of the beers on the shelf are IPAs, and there's less beers on the shelf because of hard seltzers and hard kombucha teas, and all the other things in the world that are competing with beer now for cooler space. Well, anyways, folks, that last part there was me just rambling on about something completely different. La Clandestine Absinthe. 100% give this a try. It's probably one of the ones that's easiest to find on the shelf of any decently stocked bottle shop. And it's probably the best absinthe that you're going to find on any decently stocked bottle shop. So give it a shot if you find it. Well, folks, that's your absinthe review for tonight. Cheers.